Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone. This is the first in the web series for a time for social transformation and movement building. So this is a learning curve for us all. We're all new to this technology and we've all been adapting during this period. And this is the first of the web series, and the title for this one is the COVID-19 pandemic, learning challenges and solutions in aiding marginalised communities. So we have 3 panel speakers today, which is MAHDAR, MAHDAR TAHIR. We have BWASA, and then we have GHAIRUNISA, JOHNSTONE. So I am representing international relations for the Salt River Society. I am also the chairperson of Rahasia Mahfusa, which is the bridge of gap between segregated communities. So I'd like to give a special thanks to Lufi Omar, SHABODIEN, ROOMANAY, and all of the presenters, and Yusuf Malcolm for the support during this process. So we want to have a look at how this outbreak of coronavirus can be used as an opportunity to see things that maybe have previously been ignored, missed, or normalized in our societies, and use this time as a launchpad for a better future in post-COVID-19. So we'd like to view this period as a blessing rather than a curse, like a pause button on life, so that we can regather and realign. Not only ourselves, but our local communities, society as a whole, and how we fit together as a global humanity community. So I'm just going to give a few introductions of our awesome presenters. So the first one that is going to be speaking is MAHDAR TAHIR. So he's going to be speaking from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. He's the founder of Crescent Collective, which is a non-profit social organisation that guides Malaysian youth towards spiritual awareness and understanding by grounding moral values through spiritual awareness and understanding through talks, community projects, and arts and culture. The key approach is in prioritising the empowerment of the marginalised or disenfranchised to bridge the gap between the social and community issues. So today, Zaid is going to be focusing on his position as director of ICAN Malaysia, which is a registered non-profit organisation in Malaysia. And it is to support the welfare of the displaced Rohingya refugee children and families in Malaysia. Next, we're going to have BWASA. So he's a firm believer in the foundation of society is the family. So he's first and foremost a husband and father of 4. He holds dear the Ubuntu Kemite perspective of seek, act, and righteousness. He is a Pan-Africanist in his love for Africa, and he uses his work as a motivational speaker and his educational work, which spans over 35 years, and he's made a great contribution to the education system in South Africa through universities and school institutions. He is the founder and chairperson of Rights to Live, which fosters the social cohesion and solidarity among the Congolese civil society. The vision is to build bridges between cultures whilst transferring skills to help migrant children and victims of atrocities to rebuild their confidence. He often acts as a spokesperson for the Congolese diaspora in South Africa, dealing with their issues and enabling the Congolese citizens to find a relief whilst encountering hardships. He offers workshops and interviews, and many things can be found online if you search for his name. So the last person that we are going to have today, last but not least, so Jean is based in Johannesburg, and our last speaker is based here in Cape Town. KUALA JOHNSTONE is the director and one of the founding members of Mustadafin Foundation, which started out of a group of concerned friends to provide accommodation, medical care and trauma counselling. Established in '86 in response to political unrest and violence in Crossroads, Cape Town, which had a devastating effect on the local community, particularly women and children. The growth has been substantial in this foundation due to the dedication and support from the Muslim community. The foundation has also been successful in supporting development in townships and extends services beyond the borders of Cape Town whenever disaster strikes. I'm now going to be handing over to SHABODIEN. He's going to be your moderator for today, and you will be in safe hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall I say Nina or Nusaiba?
Nusaiba, fine.
Thank you, Nusaiba, for the introductions. I think we have, as my opening remarks, we have almost a responsibility to try and assist in pressing the reset button for the world. And that's part of what we came to try and do today. We're not going to change the world in one day, but surely start the debate to make sure that we have a new outlook on where we are, particularly for those of us who live in marginalized communities. And that's what it's all about. Just a reminder that the topic is learning challenges and solutions in aiding marginalized communities. Those of us who've traveled a little bit, if not a lot, will know that up to 80% of the world's population actually live in marginalized communities. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. And our attempt should be to try and see how we can shift people back into the kind of fold that we all should be fitting in. So to start the discussion, I'm going to ask MAHDAR to maybe just introduce himself, a little bit of a background, MAHDAR, if you don't mind. I know that Nusaiba's given us an introduction, but just some of the work that you do in a kind of snapshot view, and then your contribution, please. MAHDAR.
All right, thank you, SHABODIEN. Thank you, all the panel speakers. Thank you, Nusaiba, Salt River Heritage Society, and also thank you to Rahsia Mafiosa for giving me this opportunity to share with a very, I think, great panel. Spoken, seen writing by John as well, and spoke a little bit with KUALA at the first meeting. So looking forward to the whole webinar. Yeah, for myself, I focus more on ICANN. I have two organizations, Crescent Collective, which is more youth development through using arts, where we try to achieve instilling or enhancing spirituality and humanity within the young people through arts and culture. But today I'll focus more on my work with ICANN Malaysia, which is more of an organization that was set up a few years ago to aid the Rohingya refugee community, especially children. So basically we run a school, a madrasa, where we look after the running of the school, the financial, the maintenance of the school, or we also develop programs, weekday programs and weekend programs for the kids to help them assimilate, adapt to living in Malaysia. But at the same time, we have a goal of them also not losing their culture, their tradition. That they have been displaced from where they came from, but we don't want them to totally lose that as well. So at the moment, though, the focus now has all shifted with the pandemic, with the lockdown, or in Malaysia we call it the movement control order. of these refugees, wage earners, most of them. Some of them are just hand to mouth. So now the focus has shifted. We have focused a lot on providing them with basic essential food throughout this time. Yeah, so basically that's what we do with, in ICANN, Malaysia.
Thank you, Mahdar. Jean, can we move on to you? Just a brief background, please, if you don't mind. You need to switch your mic on.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. My name is Jean BWASA. Basically, I'm from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a country that has been in war since its birth. I mean, 1876, when Leopold II seized the country from the international organization that gathered back then, and at the Berlin Conference that was to split basically the Congo. And ever since that time, Congo has been in a turmoil and violence. And subsequently in 1960s, we had our so-called independence, which was not independence at all. And from 1960s to this very same day that we are speaking, as I heard news yesterday, people are being killed in the Congo. And it is because of its mineral resources that people are around the world and in the diaspora per se. And mainly we are refugees, asylum seeker, which is 90% or if not 97% of the Congolese living in South Africa are asylum seekers, some for more than 10 or 20 years. As a matter of fact, for years, because of the mineral resources in the Congo, which has been a curse for the Congolese, we have been deprived of our dignity. That's why my organization, which is young, for 2 years, although I've been defending the Congolese since 1996, has advocated for women and children that are marginalized and that do not have access to the basic needs. So in a nutshell, what we do is to try to find a way so that they could live with dignity and have a life in South Africa as well as in the Congo to bring peace and democracy.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you very much for the background and the information, some of which I'm sure many people are not aware of. GHAIRUNISA, can we have a kind of background on who GHAIRUNISA is and what Mustadafin Foundation does?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, goeiemorgen, namaste. Greet you with the universal greeting of peace be upon you. And to all those who are connected, Ramadan Kareem. Well, Mustadafin Foundation has been established as mentioned earlier, in 1986, but we've been prior to that by a diverse group of people. Not necessarily were we all friends, but we were coming from a group. It was a group of people who understood what needed to be done. And because of the violence in the community, and particularly Crossroads area, that was the community we worked with. And I looked at a time for social transformation and movement building. I think this has been a forever process that we've always been part of. So the organization in its core functions was in 86, worked within a violent community because women and children were affected. And when we worked in that community, 1992, we had to reflect because we were motivated by Quran in a sense that we needed to see to the needs of the community at that point in time. 92, we reflected and said we work with women and children, but the abuse of women and children hasn't stopped. So if you look at the quote, I guess, of marginalization of women, those were part, the children, the poor, the needy were marginalized. And Mustadafin then re-looked at its core function. We provided food, healthcare, education, particularly amongst women. Our 5 core functions changed to community development, poverty alleviation, disaster relief, because we were founded in disaster, and education. That wasn't just for women and children, but really looking at the value system of families and having to empower families and not just individuals. So the very women who are employed within the organization are women who used to stand in the line. They are now our principals, our home-based carers, our teachers, and the workers within the organization. And we are strong by the fact that we 98% women, and wherever disaster is within the area, within the Western Cape as well, Eastern Cape, and even in Zimbabwe, we have been actively involved as an organization. And I've been heading the organization for the last 27 years.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
that has been the nutshell of the organization. We've achieved, alhamdulillah, in the sense that within the 3-year span, we've had 1,000 children who's never been in a school environment, and we've placed 386 of those children into schools. Because of the ages, we had to connect with organizations other than that, and we partner with organizations so that we don't duplicate. But out of that 386, 10 of those children have matriculated last year. So there's been those form of successes, and I've listened to Jane as well, BWASA.
Okay.
And part of 92 was having to introduce to the refugees in that particular time was the Somalian and the Burundi and the Congolese community. So,
right. GHAIRUNISA, can I just hold you there? I think that's part of what we're going to be discussing later on. Thank you for the introductions. All right, I think to move on now, we've now just on 20 minutes into the hour. MAHDAR, I think the topic, and I'd like us to focus on the topic that says learning challenges and solutions. Thankfully that, you sit on the other side of the world, almost from South Africa. What are your challenges and what are you looking at as solutions to those challenges? If you could maybe chat to us for about 8, 9, 10 minutes, if you don't mind. What are your challenges, particularly with your work with the Rohingya, as we've discussed before? What are their challenges? What are your challenges? And potentially going forward, what do you see as solutions?
Okay, thank you, Shabodien. Yeah, the title of the topic suggests learning. And we're still at that curve right now. We're still learning there because I think a lot of organizations, forget organization, a lot of government are not prepared for this COVID-19 pandemic. We see developed Western government not prepared for it. We see, a lot, and this goes to all the level of society, and I think probably in many countries, but in Malaysia especially, the NGOs are not prepared for it. There's a lot, and then when the movement control order was implemented, everybody is like even not sure what it's all about. They don't know what are the movement they can do and they can't do. People were afraid of food supplies. People were rushing out to get their food. There's a lot of panic buying happening. So that kind of like until today, people are still adapting to. And as we extended, we have already extended in this country 3 times that we have extended the order. So we're going until now. Recently, just a couple of days ago, it's been extended to 14th May. So we're going to Ramadan, and this is all new. The way we are embracing or welcoming Ramadan is all new. So in terms of our work, for instance, we are not prepared as well in terms of what do we do in this situation with the classes, with the programs. We're all learning now to go online, which we have always never really bothered about because it's always been education that we provide. There's always been we have to have that contact with the student. So we never looked at it, but now we are starting online program. Online classes for the children since last week, headed by our president from UK. She's in UK at the moment, but she's doing online classes with the children. It's been going on since last week. So that's new for us. And also, but then also we have to see like what the main focus kind of like change, kind of like shift, because with the refugee community and with the status in Malaysia is like Malaysia did not sign the Geneva Convention on refugees, so we basically do not recognize refugee. Technically, we don't recognize refugee. So a lot of refugees have documentation with UNHCR. They got the card from Malaysia, so the documentation with Malaysia, but we also don't know what are the documentation with local authorities. So one of the things that I will talk about this further later, but so our shift changed into, because of the challenges now, is a lot of our the community of refugees that belongs to that school that we're taking, there's about 100 families, because we have about 100 students, so there's about 100 families approximately. Now, most of them are daily age earners. If they don't work today, they don't have salary today. So being with the lockdown or the control order, they're not allowed to go out to work. A lot of their, and also this has basically kind of like cripple their income. So the first thing that becomes priority is to provide food, enough food for the family. And then we're looking at, so as a lot of these people are still renting out. They have rental to pay. They have utilities, electricity to pay. So that's another area, cash, which we at the moment, to be honest, we know like we are fundraising. We don't have the capacity, so we have to pick up what is priority. So the priority is to get them food, and we have like advised them, to talk to their landlord, or they can get a moratorium until this thing settles down. So I guess we are still learning, but what we have seen is what are the things that's not in place before such crisis. So basically now we are, when we're dealing with refugee, we're doing crisis management. But when this happened, it was like we're doing crisis management within a crisis management, and we're not really prepared for this small crisis. We kind of like are used to the first crisis management, and this second crisis management within a crisis management, we're not prepared for it. So there's a lot of things that we realize that, these are the things that should have been in place. But like I said, this is learning. As the title suggests, it's learning. In the future, when this happens, hopefully we're much more prepared. We have things in place, such as documentation. We have another issue with the refugees is now, which also going to concern, the society at large. And this is how integrated this COVID-19 virus has basically shown the world. I think the COVID-19 virus has shown the world that how interconnected we are. How we can bring good or bad. We can bring virus or disease to anyone of us because we're so interconnected. So the other concern is a lot of the refugees have insecurities of going to get themselves tested. So basically, at the moment, like even within our community, we have asked around, is there any symptoms? Is there anybody within this community that has contracted the virus? It's very hard to get a good information. So at the social level, we don't know how the government is getting this information within these people, within this community, and that is a concern for us because it also is going to not just affect their community but our community. So this one will reflect back, like that there's no real documentation. We don't know where they are. We don't know their address. We don't know how many they have in their family. So to have a kind of like a figure of tests, we have about 150. We have about 200,000 refugees in Malaysia. In that, we have within that number, 150,000 of them are Rohingyan refugees from Myanmar. So that's a huge number out there, a huge number that we should be concerned about what they test. So this is the other thing that again that we're learning. How do we do? Because we have asked them, and we have got feedback from the refugee that they have insecurities of going out to get tested. One is they can't afford to be in the hospital for 2 weeks if they are positive, and they don't know what happened with their family if they're positive. There's migrant areas by the government that the government rightfully have to cordon off. There's a few areas in KL because of the high number of infection there. So now when that happened again, there's issue about food supplies, but the government when the government cordon off, quarantine the whole building, they will supply food, which is no problem. But then again, that's kind of show like, that is one area. What about the areas that, you know, the refugees that has not been tested yet? So that's another concern. So this we look at as moving forward. How do in the future we need to have a mechanism whereby these people, the refugees, even though in Malaysia they're not, do not have that insecurity to go out to get themselves tested. You know, that's another, you know, that's quite the health issue. And then when this happen and when they are stuck in their own community, in their own home, unlike a lot of us, which still can go out to the supermarket, we still can afford to go out and buy food. You know, the refugee communities, you know, do not have that capacity. You know, first is financially. Number two is the security of to go out. You know, within you know, when everything is locked down for them to go out, and they don't have vehicles. They're walking. You know, they're on a motorbike rather than a car to get a lot of supply in one time. Is good. So there's a lot of these small things, but it all adds up for their problem that we have done. And then of course you know, on our part, we have, you know, what we can do is, of course, like, you know, I have to do crisis or emergency fundraising. In that sense, we see how community has also come together. You know, we have like, people have been generous. People realize the situation, that there's a lot of marginalized community. You know, the refugee in Malaysia is just one of it. You got the you know, the low income community, which also, you know, at my own capacity and on the side that I'm trying to, like, within my neighborhood, trying to provide as much as possible, because these are also local daily age earners, again, you know, living in the, you know, like in government project housing, you know, which is a very difficult environment. It's very difficult even for them to stay in. It's easy for us who's living in a nice plush palaces, I would say, even though it's houses, because when I see where they live, when I send the stuff, the food stuff, it's actually, we have palaces. We have beautiful palaces, even though it's a terrace houses or semi-detached houses, because we can still afford to have space. I mean, these people don't have space in their house. They're living in a very small, cramped, dingy, dark houses, and usually with a big number of family and children. And it's easy for us to say, oh, just stay inside, stay home. You know, and I look at the house, I can't stay inside that house for 3 days. You know, and this is part of human need. They need space. They need to go out. So these are the things that, you know, like it is a problem, like a long-term problem that needs a long-term solution, I think, in terms of housing. But yeah, immediately we just you know, providing food, and that's itself have taken a lot of our capacity. Things have been focused on that.
Okay, all right, wonderful. Thank you very much, Mahdar, for your input. And I was going to ask you about the locals, and I think you've covered that. Is it the similar scenarios faced by the local Malaysian communities too? Not so. When your work is mainly amongst the Rohingya, but are the organizations that are catered for the local communities in a nutshell, please?
Yeah, there are organizations, there are NGOs, there are communities. Community just get together. This is one beautiful thing. You know, we have this organization, this website just came out on Facebook called Caremongering, where everybody just go and help each other in their own community. But the difference between local and Rohingyans, refugees are with the refugee, local get government support. So recently in my area, the government, the Department of Public Welfare has come in and give all the families food parcels. Where else the refugee would not get this because they're not recognized. So that's a critical difference.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Can we move on to Jean, please? Jean BWASA. Jean, you need to turn on your mic.
Okay. Well, I think there's so much commonality, and thanks, first of all, on behalf of marginalized people of all nations, not necessarily the Congolese people, but worldwide, because from my understanding, it is the issues between the poor and the rich. That's how I understand it. Those who have and those who have not. So basically, the Congo and the Congolese community, first of all, would like to thank you for this opportunity through your organization, River Heritage Society and the Haisa Mausa NPO for this opportunity. So what I must say that MAHDAR's points such as promiscuity, where people are living together in a flat or in a room, are similar. The challenges of not being able to pay your rental and to pay the utility bills in South Africa and in most of the communities here in Johannesburg are the same. And as a matter of fact, yesterday, around 12, while I was preparing what I had to say, I had a delegation that came straight from the inner city in Yeovil, where there are most of the Congolese, who came here and say, what is there at stake for us? Because the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in his various speeches, as well as the government, has not touched onto what would the asylum seeker and the refugees living in South Africa, in spite of the fact that the Constitution of South Africa says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, there's no point that is clear about what is at stake for the refugees, asylum seeker, and migrant. With the knowledge that most of these people are working into the informal sector. And while working into the informal sector, that is the restaurant, the bartender, the saloon, and all these are considered as essential work. So basically this is the main challenge. The second challenge that we have is the fact that as community, Congolese, and many other communities here in South Africa and in Johannesburg, we are not united, because we must understand that we all come with all our various background of saying, let's say for South Africa, I'm from Limpopo, I'm Bedi, I'm this, and most of the people are united in this tribalistic and ethnicity that we don't have a big bulk of Congolese saying, I'm transnational or I'm transcontinental. Let's unite together and bring this solution in terms of the crisis that we're going through, which is a health crisis that is, whether it is man-made or it is natural, we don't know, but there are so many rumors that we are caught in between a war, a media war, social media war, that we, as the commoner and people who don't understand exactly what is going on, while we know that the rich country have provided for their own citizens by saying, you are confined, lockdown. Yes, lockdown, but they receive a stipend. But what about the refugees and the asylum seekers that do not even receive the 300 or the 500 that they added on top? And what they were saying yesterday, because in a meeting, they also contribute to the society in South Africa while living here. So apart from these challenges and moving forward, what we would consider is that we have the local to become in solidarity with their fellow Africans to find ways and means so that the marginalized communities could also receive funding from the government because they've been paying their tax. So if that money has been deducted from the reserve, it means that their money, their contribution has always been there. There's a question that there was, what do our government, our own government do? And these, again, it can't appeal to the refugee by the fact that he has fled his country in terms of fear of persecution. It does no longer belong to that government, it belongs to the host country. So there's nothing that these people can do. The government, or let's say our embassy, and for many years our embassy has been opposed to the Congolese community, mainly living in South Africa, because the change that occurred in the Congo was pushed by the Congolese living here in South Africa. In a nutshell, what we need to do is to find actionable points for what would happen post-COVID-19. So should we wait for another plague so that we would say, okay, this is what we need. But the actionable plan should be, we need to find decent homes, not only for the refugees and asylum seekers, but as well as for the locals. We need to find social protection for those who do not have jobs, for the inhabitants of South Africa, as well as for any Africans, and commodities. They have been distributing food parcels to locals, but where are the food parcels for the refugees and asylum seekers that are at the mercy of these crises? So these are my points in terms of going forward, finding the solidarity of South Africans and the whole continent in order to have sustainable social cohesion in between us. There's rumor that a medication has been found from the Malagasy, and that is something that is from natural plant. The other recommendation would be the AU. Why couldn't be the AU bring all the scientists and medical doctors to see whether that medication found by the president of Malagasy spoke about it could be a cure and a treatment for all the Africans on the continent rather than confining people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jean. Thank you very much. I think just hold your thought there, just in terms of solutions. When I get back to you when you start wrapping. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to GHAIRUNISA. GHAIRUNISA is based in Cape Town. And just for those who would have joined later on, BWASA is in Johannesburg and MAHDAR is in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. GHAIRUNISA, it's over to you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. I think both speakers have touched on most of the things that I would have wanted to say, but I looked at the situation that we are in, and as Jean is saying, in the Western Cape, if you're looking at it from a social, economic, political situation, the very people that is from here are in that very position that the refugees are in as well. They're confined, they are marginalized in a sense. And if you're looking at the different forms of marginalized, particularly within the COVID-19, but prior to COVID-19, Western Cape has been, in a sense, not just Western Cape, but if you're looking at areas in the Eastern Cape and the rural areas, we've already been in a position of poverty, unemployment, the issue relating to gangsterism and drugs has been one and core problems and challenges that the Western Cape has had. And if you're looking at from what Jean is speaking about within the Congolese, this is a national problem. I truly believe it's because we don't look at the value system from a human perspective, that we look at things from an ethnicity perspective, from a race perspective. And what we need to realize is that we are all human, and the COVID-19 didn't ask which nationality you were or which, it affected us as human beings. And the mere fact that we are human, we should look at all aspects from a humanitarian perspective because of our humanity. And for me, the marginalized is not just the marginalized, because the people prior to COVID-19, it was the marginalized was the women, the disability, the aged, the poor, and those who have and those who don't have, as Jean has mentioned earlier, the rich or the poor. So within the areas which we've worked in, I look at prior when we heard of COVID-19, we wrote to disaster management, we wrote to social development, we mentioned that in retrospect to what is going to happen in lockdown, how is this going to affect those who are poverty-stricken already, those who are affected because there is no food there's no work, there's no food. You know, people are if the whole BE process that is being looked at, so there already is a dysfunctional process within a community prior to COVID-19 that we have never addressed. because we have not burned the 1955 legislation that still makes us as separate human beings, forgetting that we are from one race, then we wouldn't have a problem relating to the refugees or the migrant workers or those who come, because we are all human, we all get affected. Prior to COVID-19 and COVID-19, the organization within Mustadafin Foundations, we looked at it from all aspects, and we're saying the Quran is very clear. We are one race, we are part of the human race. We don't say, okay, you or not you. And we've worked within those particular aspects of that. But you'll always find that there is no proactiveness within, and I must say, I thank our president for his proactiveness when he did the lockdown, because it has saved many lives. And his message this morning on to the Muslim community, alhamdulillah, it was a beautiful message that he gave. But you look at it from a perspective where, what is it that needed to be done prior to the lockdown? Education is not something that is high priority anywhere in our system. Yet, if we had an educated community, because Western Cape, I'm not saying we're different. There is a lot of things that can be shared nationally, but we have a historical history, which is social, physical, the emotional, political situation within our community that has touched people differently because of the TOT system, that the educational system and the community that we work in particularly is the ADD, the ADHD, your phase, and that is historically the oppressive system which the communities are, what we have inherited and what we are working with. So a lot of our communities are not necessarily educated. So as an organization, besides with assisting refugees, without assisting our community in the sense of providing food parcels, creating awareness, it is at times a nightmare reminding the team itself who's creating awareness to say physical distancing must be adhered to. So a lot of our people, strangely enough, people will say, no, but everybody has a phone, everybody has TV. The communities we work in don't have necessarily all phones, they don't have TVs, they live in basics, they live in informal settlements, they live on the street, they live in homes where it is, I can't say bare necessities, because what is shocking is that they aren't even those necessities, and they are from the local community within the Western Cape. So having to remind them that, wash your hands, there is no water. Keep a distance. I think both of the speakers have said you're living within a community or in a household where there's 5 to 6 families. This is your local community. This is not just only the refugees. This is the Western Cape. The housing situation that we've inherited is continuing. So for us as a community prior to COVID-19 and within COVID-19 is that we have already inherited a very bad situation. Okay. And it has just been enhanced with the COVID-19. So what the organization has done, yes, we provide food parcels. We've partnered with social development. And it's not just for the local community. There are refugees on that. But also on our own, we've also provided and made those particular things possible. Do we meet all the people? No, we're not meeting everybody. But the need for us to...
Can you hold your thought there, GHAIRUNISA? I think those are the...
difficult.
Those are the solutions we're going to be looking for. So thank you very much. I think I hear you say that the local community has its own peculiar requirements given our political background. And you mentioned the TOT system. You want to just kind of quickly elaborate what you meant by the TOT system for those of us who are not familiar with it?
Well, within our historical aspect, the TOT system was the system where the farmers paid their workers with alcohol and not necessarily gave them money to buy food. So they would get alcohol as a payment. And for generations, in some farms, it is still happening. And the alcohol today has affected, so it's not at times a choice people are drinking. It is because historically this is what
they were
Okay.
given on the
All right.
farms.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So we've done a round with all three of our speakers, and thank you very much for your contributions. I think we can see that the kind of commonality that exists from whether it's Cape Town, Johannesburg, Kuala Lumpur, as a human race, we all face the same kind of challenges, not so. So having chatted briefly about the challenges, maybe we can go back to MAHDAR in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Can we look at some of the solutions that we could start looking at either currently as within the COVID arena, and perhaps post-COVID? What would you like to see? I give you 3 minutes, 4 minutes, MAHDAR.
All right, thank you, Shabodien. I think currently post-COVID arena, we just have to like be quick, just be creative and be quick, because we don't have much time, you know. So we need, like, for instance, we had a first phase to supply food for our community, and then the lockdown is extended. So we just realized, oh no, they're going through Ramadan, and they might not have enough food. So we just have to, like, impromptu, just be quick and just come up with the most effective and the most quicker solution in terms of, and the most priority of needs at the moment, which is food and supplies and all that. But in terms of a long-term supply, I think the post-COVID, there's a lot of things that we need to digest and think about. Right now, we're still in the blender, just like, still busy trying to coordinate stuff. So we might not, we see some things, but we will not see some things. But a few things that have come up, that have cropped up, and you can see, one is documentation. Documentation, for us, marginalized community, in terms of local, it's fine. This, they're local, they have the identity card, they're all registered some way or another. And if government are giving also, like, the government is helping a lot, stimulus of cash money that they're giving throughout this COVID time. That's for the local. And then we have the migrant community. Some of the migrants are legal, some are illegal. There's a lot of illegal workers. It goes up to the millions, and a higher number of them are illegal. Their documentation is messed up. And then again, without documentation, it's very hard to trace them. So that's but for focusing on my community, the refugee, again, documentation. Of course, they are documented. They get the UNHCR card. Some of them don't. But at the national level, or even at the community level, I think there needs to be a documentation in the future. Because when things happen like this, we know they are, at least they're documented. And part of the documentation, I think, is just not to control them. The idea of documentation has to be clear as well, because there's a lot of fear when somebody wants to be documented. It has to be documentation from the place of integration. Once they're documented, then you can integrate them. You don't even have the document, you can't integrate them. And integration, as I say, Malaysia as a nation, the government doesn't recognize refugee because we didn't sign the Geneva Convention on refugee. But as a community, because we've been helping, the community has been helping the refugee in their own area. But we need a more community structure. We need to be prepared in terms of the community. In the future, when this happens, we know who are the players within the community. We know who are the marginalized within the community, and we know the mechanism to reach out to them. So I think that's some solution that we can work on in the future.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jean, can we move on to you?
I think the issue of documentation has been mentioned by MAHDAR, and I won't say it. That's the same here in South Africa for not necessarily the Congolese community, but the human species that are refugees here and asylum seeker. However, with regard to South Africa, I think the promotion of African commodity to alleviate poverty would be one critical issue that we need to look at. To share equally the expenditure, because when they speak sharing food parcels, it's only for locals, and we don't receive anything as also give to our people. There's also, with the issue of documentation though, I would say that most of the people might be extension illegal in this country, so there should be an amnesty for those people to renew their papers, and also to have a proper identification, not that paper that we usually get. We need to have also an education for social cohesion through cultural exchanges, such as dance, poetry, and all these so that it will also cater to the trauma that people have gone through during this COVID-19 debacle. So there are many other aspects like opening a storyline for people to talk what they've gone through during the COVID era. And one aspect that I see often is the fact that the media covers all the local issues, but not the refugees. If we could have also the marginalized TV and radio that could cover these issues, that should be also great, just in a nutshell.
All right, thank you very much, Jean. Thank you. GHAIRUNISA. Is GHAIRUNISA with us? GHAIRUNISA?
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Well, I think both speakers have answered those things. The question, can you just reiterate that question again?
The solutions that we're looking for. We talked about your challenges and you started to talk about some of the solutions you were looking at, and I stopped you there. What does Mustadafin do in terms of solutions currently, and how does it see implementing a kind of new wave of opportunities going forward?
Well, I've mentioned earlier, and also the two speakers have mentioned it, that's why I just needed to redo it. First and foremost, as human beings, we need to look at the human value. The organization has rolled out the food parcel situation, creating awareness within our communities, and we've never separated the concept of who's migrant, who is refugee. We've generally worked with human beings, and we've assisted within that. And Jean can possibly ask the refugees within the Western Cape who has worked with the organization, because we also employ, and therefore we know where it comes to. So the organization has always taken a perspective, as from a Quranic perspective, in the sense that we assist human beings. And our rollout is we continue with that. We've provided food parcels, cooked food, because the food parcels, and I must say, this is the time you'll find individual organizations emerging. So organizations like Mustadafin, who has a track record, is not always seen, because you find all the other organizations emerging, but we have continued the work that we do. We provide the necessary support for our communities, in the sense of the areas, whether it's in Bellville, where a lot of the refugees are, Salt River. So we have worked within those particular spectrum and providing a need, but not enough is being done. And Jean can adhere to that as well, in the sense of, because there is no separation of migrant workers to refugees and those who came purely for economic reasons. So when people see anyone outside from Africa or that, they'll say these are the problem area, because it is just seen as a blanket approach to how people perceive, particularly our local community perceive they're the problem, and they take away many things. So education in our world is and should be priority, whether it is on a local level, but also the refugees on the other side have also maintained a clustered approach to them and us. And instead of us as a whole, that we all have similar issues, similar problems, maybe different, but looking at it from a purely, like the Quran, it came to all of mankind. And that is what we need to identify and adhere to, that no Muslim can make its prayers or even fast today, not reminding those, the poor, the marginalized, and the affected, because zakah is supposed to create that balance for us. And those are the things that as a community we need to share with others. And MAHDAR, you spoke about those things. This is the time when people also feel more that they should be giving, because it's a month of giving, month of spirituality for the individual, but also this is the month that they give. And I hope that as the community who listens out there will recognize that we do have a footprint of 34, almost 36 years within our community, yet we are in itself an organization who are marginalized.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go now for closing remarks, and I'll start with MAHDAR.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think it's been this, the topic again is this COVID-19 pandemic. There's a lot of reflection that people have talked about the coming of this COVID, the situation that we're in, the Cyber mentioned, and at the moment there's like a stop button to us, But it's also a good time for, I think, for us to kind of see, our function or our place where we function, whatever we do, you're an engineer, you're a social worker, some people may not feel like what they do is really functional around this time, but you are, you just have to look upon, I think, how much we're consuming. We are consuming much more than we all need to consume usually, and you see, like the panic buying is again, it's just that traits, or that the weaknesses within us that comes out, that we think that, oh, we're going to be locked down and we consume so much, and just like KHAIRUNISA say, this is a month of fasting, where a month where we eat less, we take less, and we give more. We give more of the things that we take much in excess usually. So we give more time in worship, we give more time in sadaqah, in alms, and charity. We give more time of thinking, about the others, how they're living it up. I always tell my children, that you're living in paradise. Because I just came back from dropping food, and when I see where they live, it's not pleasant. I couldn't live there, to be honest. I couldn't live there for one day, to live in such a house. And we're living in paradise, and just to be grateful of that, is a first step for us to recognize, to start being able, to start being aware of what we have, what we have, and what we, and what we have, is it really matters or it doesn't, because these are the times that really tells us what matters and what matters not in life. So for me personally, I realized there's a lot of things that doesn't matter in my life, but it became mattered because I was so full on. I was full of myself. So these are the times that I think it's great. Like they say, everybody say, despite the COVID, it's a blessing. It helps us to reconnect with our Lord. And I would like to end with one of the beautiful saying of a guru, or a Hindu guru, who came to Malaysia early on, before, during early independence time in the 50s, in the 40s, 50s. His name is Vivekananda. So he says that, he have a beautiful saying. He says, you are for God and not for others. You are for God and so for others. So, the way we connect to God is by connecting to others. If we just live in our own shell and think that we are spiritually elevated, but we don't really care about how others are living their life, we kind of we're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves. We're not going to get anywhere.
Thank you, MAHDAR. Thanks very much for that contribution. I appreciate it. We'll go to Jean. Jean, your mic.
We're all trying to adjust to these new ways of communicating.
I notice.
Well, yes. If I were to say something as to end, I would end with a thinker, Arthur Schopenhauer, who said that all truth passes through various phases. First, it is ridiculed. Secondly, it is violently opposed. And the third position, it is accepted as self-evident. So at the moment, we are all accepting COVID-19 as a self-evident blessing, as MAHDAR is calling it, for us to ponder and see how as a humanity we can all go forward. From time immemorial, Africa has been the engine resources at the center of the development of the entire globe. without our own knowledge or out of our ignorance. And today, again, it is at that center. But we have not recognized our greatness. And it is about time as Africans, because we contribute so much to the world, that we could bring the Africans at the center of our own development and economic justice for a fair and just society globally, and bring peace, because the problem that we have now, people might ignore it, but it's a new global order that is between the East and the West, and where we as Africans, we are left out. And this is the time where we need to rise up as a continent and bring peace to the continent and to the world. Because again, if we don't have peace now, then we can just forget that the world existed, because it is Africans that are most affected. And the whole issue about refugees and asylum seekers, for me, baffles me in Africa when we speak about Ubuntu and Ubuntu's philosophy, which is we are who we are because of others. So my question to GHAIRUNISA was, do you have such an organization here in Johannesburg, or sister organizations that you can recommend? Because the Congolese community, sorry to speak about nationalities, but they are suffering here in Johannesburg. Thank you.
We can have that discussion later on. Thank you very much, Jean. Thanks for your contribution. GHAIRUNISA, closing remarks?
Well, I think our two speakers have spoken about it, but for me, it's not always easy, as we've become so individualistic. I believe if instead of, as we are in the past, you spoke about Ubuntu, is slowly becoming lost, and it's not completely, but we should continue to still have the spirit of love. However, with growth, and I will say financial growth, we seem to have become less conscious of the less fortunate, including towards our own families. But we must also remember we are greater than our despair. The negative aspects of humanity are not the most real and authentic. The most authentic things about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering. And COVID-19 has reminded us all about that. We are best defined by the mystery that we are still here, alhamdulillah, and I can still rise upwards, still create better and do better, that we can face the realities that is faced out there, and that we will survive, and this will pass. That the greatest despair, the greater future might still bring for us, inshallah. But I also want to say it is not easy within what is happening in our world, that the human aspect should be reminded, and always be a conscious decision that we make, that we are committed on primarily that the Quran commands Muslims to do that which is right and forbid that which is wrong. And this is the month that we must remember that we need to do what is good for ourselves as human beings, as well as for others. And just to tell you, unfortunately, Mustadafin Foundation is within the Western Cape. We do work very small within the Eastern Cape on a different level. But the work that we do spells out for the things that we do. And this is the time to remember the very thing that topic is about. The most marginalized are the poor, the needy, the seniors, the aged, and those who cannot do things for themselves, to remind us as human beings that every human being has a right. It's a saying of the organization, if every man helps his neighbor, then who will need help? And the educational system needs to be readdressed, and educating human beings how to live with other human beings. We can teach people subjects, but that's one aspect of it. We need to create the opportunity for us as human beings to educate on how to live with one another and not see each other within ethnicity and any other aspect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. That's the wrap, people. I must thank the speakers. Perhaps I can start with MAHDAR, Tahir in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Thank you for your contribution. I think we've learned a lot, and perhaps we can explore some of your recommendations going forward in another session. Jean BWASA in Johannesburg in South Africa. Thank you very much. We know that you as a community going through trying times, but inshallah, God willing, there'll be support for you, and let's see how we can work together to try and assist. Then GHAIRUNISA Johnson in Cape Town in South Africa, who's been a stalwart with Mustadafin for a very, very long time. She's been a social worker in the community for many, many people and has done some stunning work. So thank you to you as speakers. I must thank Lutfi Omar in Cape Town, who's managed the technology in the background, and thankfully we survived today. It can drop you at the best of times. And then most importantly, I think as a member of the Saltwater Heritage Society, thank you to Nusaiba for arranging this under her NPO, Mafiosa. I asked her what it means, and there's some mafia linked to the name. I'm not sure how it comes to, but I think it has something to do with the Italian background. So thank you to you, Nusaiba, for facilitating this, and let's see if we can arrange quite a few more of these, and hopefully it could be quite a bit more productive. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, Shabodien.
Thank you, Shaban.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukran.